From Our Perspective looks at the lives and behaviors of millennials, Generation Z, and the changes that are happening in our 21st century and the innovators that are making it happen. We will explore trends, technology, music, fashion, social media, business, science, the arts, faith, and lifestyle. So come join us on Comcast, Verizon, and online. Good day, everyone. Today we have 3 guests with us. Miss Marile Yvonne Schack, who is a licensed clinical professional counselor. Throughout the show, we will be calling her Yvonne. Then we have Miss Donna Mazik, who is a registered nurse, counselor, and non-profit executive. And finally, we have Jelani Scipio, who is a graphic artist, content creator, and entrepreneur. Welcome. And I am Colleen Scipio, the host today and the executive producer of From Our Perspective. It's mental, the importance of knowing the signs. The definition of mental health. Mental health is a state of mental well-being that enables people to cope with the stresses of life, realize their abilities, learn well and work well, and contribute to their community. Ladies, do you have anything more that you would like to add to what you believe this definition is? I will start with Miss Yvonne.
One thing that we have to remember when we're talking about mental health is that it's a continuum. And where well-being, mental health and well-being is on one end of that continuum, there are different places between that and mental disorders that is true of all people. So we have to remember that not one person is the same. Not one situation is the same. Not one remedy for addressing the mental disorder is the same. And also remembering that there have been many people who are on the other side of the spectrum, some point in the spectrum, who have had successful lives. They get the help that they need, they have the support that they need, and they are able to live a productive life.
And Ms. Donna?
I so agree with the definition and what Yvonne shared. I just want to share some fast facts about mental health, because it's not a solitary thing. It's on a continuum, as we heard, and folks are not as alone as it may appear. So some facts about mental health. In the US, 1 in 5 adults experiences mental illness each year. And 1 in 20 adults experience mental illness each year. Serious mental illness. 1 in 6 youth ages 6 to 17 experience a mental health disorder each year. And 50% of all lifetime mental illness begins by age 14 and 75% by age 24. And the other fact I'll share is suicide is the second leading cause of death among people ages 10 to 34. And what I want to share is that this is our problem. This is a shared issue. And I'm so glad that we can talk about it today.
What does a mental health crisis look like? We look at the domino effect. Sometimes it may seem something that starts small. We don't take care of it, and there are consequences down the road. Any thought on that, Jelani?
There are a lot of thoughts on that from my end. I mean, when I just especially because I just turned 30 2 weeks ago, so I could speak on the fact that there was definitely signs of something being wrong early on, and they were brushed or misdiagnosed. And because of that, it wasn't dealt with the proper way, or at least I wasn't taught how to deal with it properly as early as I should be. So even when it came to certain situations where other people said that they had bipolar disorder like I do, we weren't on the same page, because as for them, they may have had more time, or they did have more time dealing with it than I have, because I only really knew what the real issue was at 25. So I've only had like 5 years to kind of understand what triggers me, what makes me upset, and searching for the problem, versus people who have been like going through it since like college or high school or whatever, and have been in like, dealing with it since then. Like most of the people who talk to me about this are older than me, and they also weren't willing to share what they know, because again, same time, people are different. What worked for them may not work for me, and what works for me may not work for them.
Anyone else would like to add to what's that, a mental health crisis in reference? It seems to be more so of a puzzle in the mind. And I think as individuals who may not be in that space or understand that, we missed, as Jelani was saying, misdiagnosis can happen. People not understanding what exactly is the frustration that they may be feeling, how to deal with that frustration. Also, to having experience in the medical space myself, we see so many of the young people coming in saying that they feel depressed, or they feel bored, or they feel down, but they don't know exactly how to define that feeling down. They just say, I'm feeling down. Or, how do we address that, Mrs. Schack?
I thought there was one important thing that I heard that Jelani said, is that had he known earlier, how things would have been very different had he known earlier. And that people associate mental illness with shame and so many other emotions that prevent them from being transparent about it. And that's why we believe it's so important that everybody is educated on this issue of mental illness. And I commend you for this time. And there are resources that are there to teach parents, to teach the general community about this other illness, just like any other one that we face. And because there's been a stigma associated with that, then it hasn't been, even though it's out there, the public does not know in many cases about, what's out there and what they can avail themselves of. Of course, there are many, there are signs, and consistent signs is what I hear Gianni saying, is that there were signs, but because there was not awareness, then no one knew to address this. But the thing I'm hearing too is there were patterns. That's the word. There are patterns that were there. And when you see something, if I have a stomach ache and I'm having a stomach ache over 2 or 3 weeks, over months, over years, which you see in teenagers and adults, then probably I'm going to go and find somebody to help me. If that one person doesn't do it, then I'm going to find a specialist. I'm going to do, but that doesn't seem to be many times that's not the case in the area of mental illness. So I just think there are many signs. Of course, with depression, there's sadness, mood swings. On the other side, there are extreme behaviors that are risk-taking behaviors. There are many levels of mental illness, but we are fortunate in that there was a time mental illness meant that you went to an institution, but we're living at a time where we have resources and supports for individuals so that they can live a very productive life.
And Ms. Donna, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I really appreciate Jelani's lived experience and how he shared what's happened in his life. And the reality is, as Ms. Schack mentioned, we are body, soul, and spirit, and we have to pay attention. Adults who are living with children, working with children, we need to pay attention to what's happening. I will tell you, in my background as a school nurse, in a high school, I would sometimes see students who would come to me and they would complain of a stomach ache or a headache, or they had other symptoms, and it was that word pattern. When I would see something over and over, and I'm doing the assessment of the physical body, then I have to say that that body is giving us a message. And that's when I would talk to a parent or a guardian for that student and say, I wonder if something else is going on. Just what Ms. Schack said, let's investigate. Maybe there's something else happening. We've checked through the physical, and the physical part, the physical aches, the physical symptoms could really have a home in something else. Paying attention. And so from symptoms of sadness to anxiety, let's not brush it off. Let's pay attention to what we are seeing and what we are feeling. For those who are with children and youth, pay attention to what they're saying and what they're doing, and then begin the investigation into the health. Mental health and well-being is part of overall health and well-being. It's not separated. And I'm so grateful for this opportunity to decrease the stigma about seeking health. We are whole people, and mental health is part of our whole person.
Now we are going to deal more so with what we would define as factors that can threaten, our mental health. We look at two individuals and we may say, okay, this is an older gentleman and a younger woman, but there are differences in their life, life experiences, cultural differences, family background, appearances, personality differences, and social networks. Do you believe that any of these factors may contribute to a person's mental health later on in life? What are your thoughts? Jelani?
Yeah. Actually, you hit something from almost all of these, especially because being a Black male, African-American male, a lot of stuff is actually even more deep-rooted because culturally, like, I talked to my friends about how I felt a long time, and they think it's funny sometimes. Like, they'll take what, so you're going through something actually as, like, comedy, Like, for me, like when you talking about the stomach ache earlier, for me is I have an issue with my temper. My temper was always exaggerated over what was necessary. That was always a common denominator. People say, yo, why is he so angry over such a little thing? To everybody else, it felt little. To me, it felt like the end of the world. And that would make the temper and the reaction way bigger than it needed to be. And then also when I tried to like talk to people about it, it was always dealt with like laughter, because it's like, oh, ha ha ha, he broke this or he threw that, ha ha ha, that's hilarious, rather than why did he do that? And that alone already made it hard to talk to people, because when you're sitting there going, well, when I try to talk to people, they don't want to listen. But when I throw something, I get a reaction. I get someone to listen to me now, because now people are paying attention because I just threw something across the room, which, that's not a good thing. Like, it's already problematic when you're a child. It's even more problematic when you're 30. You can't just like launch something across the room and then get everyone's attention that way and think, oh, this is great. But it's like, sometimes you kind of regress when you can't think of any other way to talk to people about it. Like when I'm left to the tools of, I can't speak, I can't like explain, like, then what else do? You have nothing else left. Like what do babies do when they're hungry? They can't speak yet, so they cry. That's a symptom to say something's wrong. I need something to do. They cry when they're hungry. They cry when they're sick. They cry. That's all they can do because they can't speak yet. So if you take away all those things, what is a person left with to do but just react out physically? Because there's nothing left. You won't listen. I can't explain to you properly. And so all I have left is either just show you or react in a negative way.
That's a really great insight. The frustration, if you look at the man on the left, you see his frustration as to, I'm frustrated. Is that something that you'll come across, Ms. Schack or Ms. Mazik? Jelani explained it really well in reference to the frustration in trying to express what you're feeling inside. What tools can you give someone or tell someone and how they can best overcome that?
Like we mentioned before, it's not a one one thing that fits everybody, but of course I've seen it. I've worked in high schools and elementary schools, middle schools for years and years and years. So I've seen behavior year after year that from the same child, that the child may have a reputation of having this certain behavior. But you try many strategies, including counseling is a strategy, one-on-one counseling sometimes, but group counseling is amazing. So even within the school or within the community, looking for those avenues that a child can have a sense of community and connection, and to be able to identify who they are with someone else who's in that circle with them. The first step is probably going to your primary physician and sharing that, like, again, sometimes parents feel helpless and sometimes they feel, give up. And there are resources for parents who are in those situations so that they can get the help that they need. We have a resource that called Mental Health First Aid, where anyone in the community can, like I said earlier, can avail themselves of that resource to learn more about what they're seeing. But just to emphasize, your primary physician and being upfront, being honest about the behavior that you're seeing, and asking for referrals to mental health facility, and I don't mean a mental health hospital, but there are many places where you could go and be assessed to find out what is going on. So and all of, like Jelani said, all of these areas we can see can be factors, and we call them adverse child experiences. Any one of these places here can cause difficulty in our mental health.
Jelani, and I'm hearing the frustration with him, and he expressed it so well because it's the frustration of many. You are recognizing the triggers, right, Jelani? You're recognizing that I'm feeling, I'm like, how you're getting angry, you recognize it's boiling up in you. At that point in time, what are the steps that you take to cause that to come down? Either you move away from the situation for a while, you go for a walk, what are some of the things, practical things, other than the medication, taking medication? And of course, we are saying this from, putting a disclaimer, everyone needs to check with their doctors to make sure and everything like that. But I'm just saying from the standpoint, the triggers, right? What are some of the things that have worked for you that you've tried that you probably can share, or at this point in reference to, bringing that down, bringing that level of anger down?
Well, the best way I could say that thing that worked for me a lot was the ability to be allowed to walk away. Growing up, it wasn't easy to walk away at first, mostly because, especially when you're like in high school or you're a child,
right,
you're made fun of for walking away, which it just increases the anger. Because like now, if I just choose to walk away, it's like, oh, I lost because I walked away. So now there's that extra added thing. But once you grow up and you're no longer in high school, it's easier to walk away. But then you have certain issues. Like I would say one of my main problems specifically too, is that when it comes to these things work when you're at home and you're in a space where you can do that or you're allowed to do that. But a lot of these places, and especially like these workspaces, they don't let you do that, which leads to, again, back to what I had said before, where then what's left to do besides throw something across the room? Because if I tell you I need to take a break and I need to walk away, and you're telling me you can't walk away, we don't have time for you to walk away right now, and I don't have time to hear what you're saying right now, and you keep taking away the things that you've built up to get through these type of things, medication or not. Eventually, any person that's human would eventually say, I can't. Like they'll freak out. Who wouldn't? Because you essentially told them you can't talk about it. You can't do anything that you use to cope, which is, for me, is like walking away. That was the best thing I ever learned, was to walk away. That was like the best thing, and it saved me the most, because just leaving is very impactful for tons of reasons, you know, because I can now calm down, leave the situation. Like I can physically leave the situation. There's a release in that, because I'm literally physically walking away. I can physically turn around and go, you know what, I'm done, just walk away. And I already start to feel calmer just with that alone, because I physically left the situation I was in, or altercation I was in. But it goes back to the same type of scenario, though, is that like then when you take that stuff away, and you got people talking about, because a lot of people unfortunately are ignorant when it comes to this type of stuff, because they don't want to admit to it themselves that they have these issues, or they say, well, I got through it, you can too. And again, people are different. We're not all the same. That's hence why humanity is the way it is, and people are the way they are. We're all different. Just because you're able to do it a certain way and I can't, doesn't make me any less than you. It just means that that's just not meant for me. That may work for you. And a lot of these places, this is kind of something that's championed by the majority. Majority is like, you should just get over it. I got over it. He got over it. Why can't you? And this just adds to the frustration and adds to that ammunition, like not ammunition, that's the wrong word, but adds to that, to the blowing up, the immediate or incoming just explosion of essentially eruption of emotion, because none of that's working.
We have managers who could be very aggressive, or not the best in how they deal with employees' personalities. And someone who may not be able to, for whatever their background, family background may be, they may have abuse in their family background, or even in reference to their personality type, shaming them in front of the rest of the employees. Who knows what triggered, and this is not justifying individuals coming in and shooting up the workplace, but what was the triggers that may have caused them to do that? And these are things that, we as individuals can be more aware of when we speak to individuals, or someone comes to us and say, this is how they're feeling, to really listen. What do you think, Mrs. Mazik?
Well, just several things, and indeed, Jelani, you've given several deep insights that are very important to unpack here in the more general sense. First, I think for things like violence, gun violence, I think it's really hard to make the link as to what was the reason why, because we're all different, and we don't know whether that was truly a mental health issue or something else. I'll just say that.
Correct.
We just don't know. But what I will say, what this Schack spoke about, the first aid, the mental health first aid, as a society, there is a need for universal understanding of mental well-being, and when we're not well. And we don't have that universal understanding. So when she mentioned the adverse childhood experiences, there's research that says that if children before the age of 18 have dealt with physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical neglect, emotional neglect, mental illness, divorce, substance abuse, then they have trauma in their lives. And when I listed those different things, emotional neglect, you don't always see that, right? Someone not paying attention to what you're saying. You don't always see that. Loss of significant relationships. What I heard from what Jelani said is, as a society, we need to become more aware of what could be going on in a social and emotional way. And so social emotional learning is for all of us. We need to be able to read cues. But one question came into my mind with what Jelani was sharing. We haven't learned to say to someone, what happened to you? Versus, why are you doing this? Because if someone said to Jelani or any of us, what happened to you, then we actually put our words to what could be the cause, the root issue of the emotional, I'll call it emotional dysregulation, where we cannot sort out what's going on. And Jelani has been able to come up with some ways in which he can regulate his emotions. And what he brings up is important for us to know. In the general public, in the workplace, in the school, in the home, if folks don't give us the space to do that regulation of our emotions in a way that's safe for everyone, then we lose out on being able to help someone who's in a mental health crisis.
Yeah. So there are many things that we will see people that they may look, everything looks fine, but they're literally crying. They're literally saying, you see all the different, same person, but so many different expressions on a certain day, you know? They may show that, you know, yes, I'm fine, but really and truly inside, they're not. And we think of the beauty queen that jumped from her building, you know? She was another person that had serious depression. And, you know, the general public didn't know that everything looked perfect in her world. But yet she was really suffering for many years, and so accomplished. So what else would you like to add before we, in reference to looking at someone like Marcy, who may be like that beauty queen that, you know, certain days she is on her social media platform, other days she may be crying, other days she's like, you know, I don't need to deal with anyone. How do we, I guess my question is, you know, we are social beings, and we among people that are friends and everything. Because even among that same, you know, we talk about the beauty queen, her co-workers didn't even have an idea. And they're seeing her daily. How do we, you know, get into to that person's head to really say, are you okay? Or how, you know, because they'll say, oh, everything is fine. But how do we, you know, Ms. Schack, how do we do that? What are some of the skills that we need to, you know, to know?
You know, I think sometime in retrospect, we look at situations like that and then we say, you know, I didn't know. And then as we think, we're like, oh, she wouldn't join us in the lunchroom.